Welcome. I am Ricky Berger, joined by David Halpern Sheehan, my sensei, and this is Aikido Perspectives. What? It's an intro. This is episode 2 of Aikido Perspectives. And hello, Sensei. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I am fine. Thank you. I thought we should start, because you said so, from recapping episode 1.
Right.
Where do you want to start with that recap, Sensei?
So we figured out the name of the show is Aikido Perspectives.
Yes.
And we want to say this is a perspective we have from our point of view in the Aikido, looking in from our point of view or our position in the Aikido universe. And we want to make it very explicit. This is our perspective.
Right. Are we going to explore other perspectives in the show?
Yeah, we're going to do that.
Okay.
But since I was so influenced by Kanai Sensei, of course, a lot of my perspective is based on his perspective as I could see it.
Right.
And although I was fortunate because we had a lot of contact with his other teachers and peers, Yamada Sensei, Chiba Sensei, Tamura Sensei, Sugano Sensei, right. Toei Sensei, Kurita Sensei, all those guys, and then Arikawa Sensei and Doshu, of course, and Waka Sensei and Waka Sensei. So we had, as Kanai Sensei students, we had great access to a wider world of great Aikido, and they all shared a sort of perspective because they were all, well, at least the ones who were kind of uchideshi at the same time with living with those sensei. So I think I got a really good influence from them as a group as well. And
you got to see them interact with each other,
right?
When you were with Kanai in various places around the world,
right? A lot of times I'd be tagging along, being the otomo or whatever.
What's otomo mean?
It means the guy that travels with the teacher.
Oh, okay.
It's supposed to, literally means like a good friend, I think. But, the otomo is supposed to like completely take care of the teacher and be his liaison with the rest of the world and wherever they're going and make sure he has everything he needs and
wow,
et cetera, et cetera.
How cool were those travels?
Very cool. Very cool. Really, it was like really wonderful.
So that recap is basically we're Aikido Perspectives. We're going to look through the eyes of your eyes, Sensei, which are the influence of Kanai Sensei, but we're also going to look at many other perspectives about Aikido around the world as we continue to do this show. And is it sort of like figuring Aikido out or seeing where we are, or
I think
exploring?
It's both. I think it's both. I think everybody who does Aikido seriously is trying to figure out what Aikido is.
That's amazing. Just as a concept, that's amazing.
Yeah, and the other part was, sorry, what was the other thing you meant? Say what you said again.
Well, that we would look at lots of other perspectives about Aikido, not just our perspective.
So it's important to think about what is Aikido. It's also important to know, I think, where you are in the Aikido universe. Like it's a solar system, right? And there's all these different larger and smaller pieces floating around.
Right.
And I think if you know where you fit into that, you have a better understanding of your own perspective, which is important, for us. But we're gonna interact with other perspectives, some of which we'll agree with, and some of which we'll probably critique.
Right.
And I'm going to feel free to critique whatever I want to.
And then people will feel free to critique us critiquing them.
Right.
And I think part of the goal, that we've discussed is we're going to have lots of people join us on the show from around the world to talk about how they feel or what their perspectives are.
Exactly. But, the thing that's important is this is as if we're in the dojo. So that means that, etiquette applies.
Right.
So, there should be no question of like trolling or anything like that. That's like, would never happen in a dojo, in a proper dojo.
A proper Aikido dojo.
Right, a proper Aikido dojo.
Right.
So, that, we'll have to address somehow, but just everybody should use them. I'm expecting everybody to use the manners they would use in a dojo. So no matter what we're talking about, it's going to stay on some civil level. We hope.
Yes. Hope springs eternal.
Yes. One can always hope.
I think actually it'll be wonderful over a course of time. And I think it's going to be a wonderful experience. So And you know what we probably should do? What we're basically saying in recapping our premiere episode is to give sort of the vision statement of what Aikido Perspectives as a show hopes to become. And we should probably encapsulate that in some sort of opening paragraph that we say every time we do a podcast.
Right.
This is what we're doing. So does that make sense?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So here we are in episode 2. What do we want to talk about today, Sensei?
Well, let's talk about what we were talking about when we were deciding what to talk about.
Okay, let's talk about that.
So we looked at 3 different sections of Aikido and the dynamic sphere, for example.
Yes.
I mean, Aikido and the dynamic sphere is like, probably one of the most important books in the United States anyway, about Aikido. It came out in 1970.
Oh, did it really?
Yeah. And it was, a very attempt to be a really comprehensive summary of Aikido in every dimension. From philosophical and everything, and different theories of centralization and theory of defense. So it's very, very well thought out. And the people who did it, of course, practiced Aikido. Mm-hmm. Oscar Ratty and Adele Westbrook. I think he did the pictures, and the pictures are like have been reused and reused by Aikidoists for decades because they're so cool.
Right.
That's
Do you consider them to be accurate or sort of like clear descriptions, physical descriptions of some of the techniques? It's really hard to show a Aikido technique in a static picture.
Yeah, it is. It is. Well, this was the first attempt to try that. Mm-hmm. And it was like a huge breakthrough because they sort of laid out a pattern of how you could go about doing that. Later, people did it mostly with photographs instead of drawings.
Yamada Sensei's book from 1980?
Yeah, something like that.
The big green book?
Yep.
With Kanai.
The original edition of the New Aikido Complete.
That was photographs, right? With Yamada and Donovan Sensei?
No, Donovan wasn't around yet.
Oh, yeah.
That was Bruce Bookman, Steve Pimsler. I think Harvey's in there. A couple other people.
Right. But this is the first time with drawings trying to depict it.
And it was also
art.
Much earlier.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
It was much earlier.
Fascinating.
So that's that. So that's like really an important book in many ways, and a very venerable book. Then I pulled out some things that Kanai Sensei wrote, and I was reading them, and the thing that came out to me was that while Aikido in the dynamic sphere is very complete and very good and very excellent in many ways, when you read the way Kanai Sensei expresses himself, it sounds much more, to my ear, authentic.
Right.
Because it's written from a guy that came out of the actual thing.
Right, exactly.
With O-Sensei and everything.
So, because this is podcast / radio, however you look at it, the audience doesn't understand that you're holding something in your hand.
Oh, right.
What are you holding in your hand?
I'm looking at the preface to Kanai Sensei's unpublished manuscript, Technical Aikido.
So to be clear, just to be clear, that book's never been published.
Correct. And so, I don't know, you want to read this one paragraph?
Whatever you want, Sensei.
Well, the thing is, like, the way it's heavy, right?
Right. Well,
so,
you sent that to me and told me to chew on it, and I read it, and there's so much about that I don't understand, so I'd love to, when you're done, ask you some questions about some of what Kanai wrote that completely are mystifying to me as a beginner in Aikido.
Right. And I think it would be mystifying to a lot of people, even to his own students. Well, I don't want to read this whole thing, but it's just, it has the weight of authenticity, just in the way he expresses himself. So, first sentence is, the first section is called Aikido is. And then the first sentence is, at the core of the practice of Aikido, more than anything else, is a continuous hard training and disciplining of one's body and mind in order to develop wisdom. In the event of a confrontation, beast-like behavior aimed solely at protecting oneself and injuring the opponent must be avoided at all costs. So that's pretty heavy to me.
Well, I think I had a margin note off the first sentence. Read the first sentence again.
At the core of the practice of Aikido, more than anything else, is a continuous hard training and disciplining of one's body and mind in order to develop wisdom.
Okay, so here's my question. How is it even possible that doing the martial art of Aikido is going to help you develop wisdom? I mean, there's lots of things that you can train really hard. I could take a big truck tire and roll it over 4 hours a day and get a lot out of that physically, but is that going to make me wise? I mean, why is this hard training going to lead to wisdom?
I mean, I think, at one level, hard training and discipline of body and mind is very much the martial arts, the traditional martial arts idea.
Right.
That just like other people could be into yoga or other things that have a spiritual dimension to them.
Right.
We're doing it through martial arts and specifically Aikido. So that's the body mind. That's why the body is very important. But I think the thing is that if you really practice Aikido in the correct way, I think you do develop some wisdom because somehow there's information embedded in the practice, like in doing those movements and thinking about those things that...
there's code in there? There's some sort of code or
I feel that way.
Something?
I just feel it's like it's somehow embedded information. So it's kind of cool because if you do Aikido, you're doing something that's completely nonverbal, really.
Right.
At the same time, there's another part of you that's thinking about it.
So, I may get this wrong, and if I do, I apologize in advance.
Wow.
So
I probably have it wrong too. So,
but
I'm not guaranteeing any of these statements.
Yes, yeah, I certainly am not either from anything that I say, but from my prior martial arts experience with karate and other styles of which I have the highest regard. I'm not comparing them. I'm not saying mine's better than yours. I'm not doing any of that thing, but with karate, the mindset, at least my mindset, was you're attacking me. I'm going to put off that attack and I'm going to attack you. And the result is a proper technique and, success and victory. I understand what that feels like. Beginning in Aikido, and this is the part where I could get it really wrong. So it seems to me it's not like that. It seems to me that that big attack comes in, and hopefully it's a valid attack, but I join it. So it's not like I'm going to remove the threat and then injure you. It's, hey, I'm going to join this energy and then we're all going to be fine. There's this different, you're joining the universe. There's this weird, different, happy sense even in the midst of this conflict. Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah, I think that's one way of putting it. I mean, this is the whole thing. It's very hard to reduce Aikido into just a few words.
Right.
So that's why I think what Kanai Sensei wrote is so interesting. What is he talking about? Confrontation. You have to avoid beast-like behavior. What's beast-like behavior? It's like, I guess I take it to mean, the kind of survival instinct that kill or be killed.
Right.
The really ancient, whatever happened to our ancestors about being eaten or, eating other things.
Is this like when we're in the dojo and you come up to me and tell me to relax and calm down?
Something like that. So I mean, so someone attacks you. So not only do you have to defend yourself because it's a martial art, it has to work on the practicality level,
right? But
you have to do it not using beast-like behavior aimed solely at protecting oneself and injuring the opponent.
How do we do it then?
You try to execute a correct Aikido technique, and in the effort to be able to execute a correct Aikido technique, you learn this whole thing about which I can't really express accurately, but something about conflict and through synchronizing with other people, how you can achieve autonomy And it's a very deep philosophical concept, which sometimes is reduced to the thing of, Aikido is love, or O-sensei said, Aikido aims to make the whole world one family.
Okay.
So, in other words, it's like you can't dehumanize the opponent. I think that's another way of saying it.
Wow. Okay, I understand.
You can't view him as like a cipher or some like insect or some, somebody, you don't have to take any human recognition of.
Right. So you can't just break it. Because you have to continue to humanize this person who's in front of you, who's attacking you, and be mindful of what you might do and should not do.
The thing is that, the exact thing you should do or not do in every situation is not clear.
Right.
So the Aikido is supposed to make you so you'll spontaneously react in a correct way.
With the right level of etiquette in the world, not in the dojo, in the world.
Yes.
Is part of this whole notion that you remain calm no matter what happens. That's part of what is given to you within Aikido. So, sort of from a martial perspective, if a confrontation occurs, you're not brought to a brute level within your mind. You're just dealing with it in an Aikido way.
Yeah. So like somebody might be trying to kill you, but you're thinking, I wonder what technique I can do against this.
And then similarly, in other aspects of your life, when you're potentially under stress or you're dealing with conflict, but not with someone going to physically hurt you, you have that same ability to just remain calm and work through things.
Yeah, and that's why I think people find that's part of the mystery of Aikido too, because people find this lesson about the Aikido very useful in applying to the rest of their lives.
Right.
Because, everybody's life is, not everybody, I guess, but many people's lives is filled with a lot of conflict, or at least some conflict.
Right.
And, everybody wants to be able to deal with conflict better. And it's really hard to do. And Aikido has a philosophy of how to live and deal with people. And you can take these things that are purely technical martial arts ideas and really easily and effectively apply them to other situations in your life.
So, to circle back to Kanai Sensei, with the very first sentence of his unpublished book on Aikido, when we do all this work in the dojo together, we're developing wisdom both martially and in many other aspects of our lives. That's what Kanai Sensei is trying to get across, as you understand it, correct?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And, I've kind of tried to adopt this view that we're trying to develop wisdom. And once you start considering that idea, you realize that, wisdom includes, like, for example, really understanding what the best solution to a problem is. So in other words, sometimes the answer would be, don't go there.
Right.
And that would be the wisest thing. Or sometimes it might be, walk away.
Right.
But if you decide you're not walking away, then you do Aikido. I'm not saying this right. Let me see. Let me start again.
Okay.
Where'd we leave off?
So, the premise that...
Oh, yeah. What is wisdom? What is wisdom in the martial arts sense?
Yes.
Wisdom in the martial arts sense is a practical understanding of the best solution to any conflictual situation. Sometimes it might be killing the guy.
Right.
Sometimes it might be running away. Sometimes
it might not be entering a contract. This is that.
Right.
What Kanai Sensei is talking about is this is about everything.
Right.
This is about right? Is that's what we're really saying, right?
Yeah, because he says later that Aikido is all about practicality and that it is a beauty that arises from its functional and practical nature.
What's interesting, as I have practiced Aikido, or tried to, in your dojo with you for about 3 years, was before that time, I heard lots of people say, Aikido can't work. Many reasons. And one of the reasons is because in a conflict, when your adrenaline begins to flow, you have myopic vision, and your ability to do anything except utilize gross motor skills, like striking you with my whole arm or my foot or my whole leg, goes out the window. So all of the fine movements of Aikido just simply are unworkable. And you've taught me that no, because you're going to remain calm, and because you're going to be so calm, your skills won't diminish. You'll be happy.
That's part of the that's part of the thing. Yeah, exactly.
Right.
And when Kanai Sensei is talking about this is exactly, I think, right on point, because beast-like behavior and solely protecting. That's what he's talking about.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Losing your cool and just going nuts and
going berserk,
basically, right. And you either kill them or you get killed.
Right.
And so I think that's exactly the same thing. So that says that part of this thing of developing wisdom is like working on yourself to calm down your out of control, your ability to go out of control.
Right.
Basically, you're trying to get control of that.
Right. Oh, I get it. So, and also, if you're out of control, your vision is limited. That whole myopic thing, that police officers go through in the middle of that, a terrible conflict that they decide whether to shoot or not, where their vision gets tunneled, and it's all very natural.
Right.
But the fact is that, if I train well in Aikido, I can be of a more broad mind because I won't freak out.
Right.
Just generally, I'll freak out less, and I can have a broader mind about everything in life.
Right. And, in a martial arts sense, not having tunnel vision is very important.
Right.
In fact, probably a lot of deaths are caused by tunnel vision because everybody, gets it in a crisis. Or not everybody, but, it's very common.
Right. Right.
And tunnel vision, if you just look at it in terms of martial arts, is really bad because the thing that's going to get you is
the thing you're not looking at.
The thing you're not looking at, exactly. So
even I know that.
Yeah. So just keeping your sort of wide angle vision going in these situations is also part of it, I think.
Yep. You talk about that a lot in the dojo about where to look, and I find it one of the hardest things to think about, and I have years to work on that. It's very difficult to say where does your eyes go and what do you do. So from this, you have an introduction to Kanai Sensei's unpublished book, and I think a page from the last chapter.
Yeah, something like that.
Are there a couple of other things that you want to discuss from it? I read it when you sent it over, and I have some questions.
Okay, well let's just. So what did we say? What is Aikido? Continuous hard training and discipline of body and mind in order to develop wisdom. Okay.
Yes.
And that we're trying to, in a confrontation, we're trying to control ourselves so we don't go either berserk or panicked or frozen in the headlights. But part of that is we're going to give consideration to the attacker as well as ourselves in some way.
Right.
And try to come out with the wisest solution to that situation.
And not dehumanize that person on the other side.
Right.
That all makes sense.
It's more like, I guess, if somebody in your family tried to kill you.
Right.
How would you deal with that?
Right. Not with everything you got, hopefully.
Well, hopefully. Right. Exactly. Yeah. Like you would do everything you could to subdue them without hurting them. Right.
Exactly.
But you could envision a situation where that wasn't possible. And so I think in the final moment, and there's no other better solution, and it's just either you're going to die or the other guy is going to die. I think martial arts says, well, it's going to be him that dies. But that's very, very rare.
Right.
And much, much more rare than people think it is.
Right.
And most conflict is just completely ridiculous about stupid things.
Yeah.
So
there's no need most of the time to punch someone in the throat.
Yeah.
4 times.
Exactly. There really isn't. And, so if everybody would just stay a little chill and not lose control of themselves with these, rage or whatever their emotional problem is.
Right.
There'd be a lot less violence.
And sort of part of it historically with Aikido, with its prior history from Aki Jiu-Jitsu is, and people don't talk about this, as you're trained, you sort of learn where the strikes are.
Right.
You just don't do them all the time.
Right.
because it A, ruins the blend of the technique,
Usually.
and B, the technique is about restoring that person to the position before they were attacking us to try to hurt us without hopefully hurting them too badly.
The thing is,
unless you have to.
Yeah, I mean, what I say is that technically it's easier to learn to strike than it is to learn to move with another person as taught in Aikido.
Right.
So, as you mentioned, a lot of times when people get too into a temi, it breaks their movement.
Mm-hmm.
It breaks up their movement, and therefore they have more trouble learning the skill of this movement idea. And I point out where the atemi, points are and positions. But yeah, I don't think it's good for most students to practice it too much. If you ever have to do it, you'll be able to.
Right. That makes sense. Should we look at other portions of this? Do you want me to?
Want to take the next sentence?
Yeah. You want to go to the next sentence?
I don't know, whatever you want.
Whatever you want.
Each sentence we could talk about for a long time.
One thing that Kanai Sensei writes, and I'm going to refer you to some of the words because I don't understand how to pronounce them. But these words I understand. No matter how strong one is, one cannot continue to exist if one tries to fight against all existence. So he talks about this is the way of Aikido.
Right.
The fact is, it's not that.
That's not right.
Oh, tell me what is right.
What he's saying, I think, is that the process of going from fighting against the universe to not fighting against the universe is the process of Aikido.
Okay, that's what I sort of meant to say.
Sorry.
Right.
Because everybody leaps to the end,
We're not fighting against it, we're joining it.
Yeah, but we're exercising a martial arts discipline in the way we join it.
I understand that. I don't know if anyone else, if the audience that are non-Aikidoists are going to... So, say that a different way.
I don't even understand it myself. This is what I mean. This is all under the rubric of what is Aikido.
This is awesome.
But I think what he says is that in martial arts, you deal with all these conflict situations, physical conflict situations. And if you keep, what are those things based on practicality? How do you defeat the opponent?
Right.
And you keep defeating opponents and you keep thinking about better and better techniques and better weapons. And how can you more efficiently kill someone? And then at some point, you probably realize that you're facing something that you can't kill.
Right.
And whether it be, act of nature or, an opponent who's an invulnerable giant or Deadpool.
Yeah.
So at that point, you give up the idea that you're the guy that's going to beat everyone.
Right.
And you're not. And if people would stop thinking that way, it would be a big burden off them.
So is it fair to say that the true concept of Aikido is if you can't beat them, join them? No, let me rephrase that. Don't even try to beat them. Just always join them.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's sort of implicit in the... I mean, I don't know. I don't know. See, like I think it's very difficult to express these things. Mm-hmm. So I don't want to say the true meaning of Aikido is anything. I want to say more like, well, this is an idea that we got from reading this.
Oh, I understand your perspective. You think instead of placing stakes in the ground and saying, this is it.
Right.
The way that your mind works about all these notions is, this is an idea about it.
Right. Let's discuss it. Let's see if we can work it through like in practice, if it's a practice thing.
That's excellent. I remember 35 years ago with Paul Sylvain Sensei when he was discussing Aikido when I was at UMass Amherst in like a club that you took credit for. So it was in a gym. It wasn't at his dojo. And he explained Aikido is that Aikido exists because you're always going to find someone bigger and stronger. And I looked at Sylvain Sensei and I looked at him and said, who? Because he was a big guy.
Right.
But that was sort of the beginning of it for me. Kanai Sensei writes, one should bear in mind, however, while trying to understand or attain the principle of harmony, that without going through the internal transformational process that begins in the state of confrontation, and only after working through a critical process eventually it arrives at a state of non-confrontation, there can be no budo. Sensei, I have to ask you, what does that mean? You want me to read it again? Here, it's on the bottom page there and on the next page.
So this is what I was trying to say before. It's like the process of budo is the process of learning more and more effective ways to kill people, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And the techniques are the bujitsu, say. Bujitsu is, the techniques of fighting.
Right. Jitsu means technique, right?
Right.
Okay.
And then budo is way, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's supposed to, I think, as I understand it, as things were turned from jitsus into dos, it was meant to include a more spiritual element, or feature the spiritual element more, or have it less in the background.
What's bu? Is that war or martial?
Yeah, bu is martial.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's what it is.
So bujitsu or something like that would be, how to kill people in war.
Exactly.
But budo would be, what's the way?
How to keep people in war. By studying how to kill people in war, arrive at cosmic consciousness.
So we're taking the back roads then.
So you go through all the techniques, right?
Right, yeah.
You study all the techniques, and you just keep working it out until you get to whatever it is you can't beat. You can't win against.
Right.
And then you have to consider, what do you do then?
Right.
And then that means that in order to figure that out, you got to be thinking on a higher level than you were all this time.
Oh, so then you rise up?
Then you rise up.
Go, oh, I get more.
Right. And then you just go to a different perspective.
Mm-hmm.
But I think what Aikido is saying is let's cut to the chase, everyone. Instead of going through another 1,000 years of trying to learn how to kill each other, let's, do things where we don't kill each other.
Right. Right.
Let's do it in a way we don't kill each other.
And have the sort of beginning concept that we join now, even in the martial, but let's join together now.
Because, to really do this, we have to keep practicing a martial art, like, say, Aikido, right, in order to work, to be part of this critical process he's talking about.
So, what are we saying about this transformational process? What does it mean to be transformed while practicing an Aikido technique?
That's what we're trying to figure out.
Does it mean anything personally to you, Sensei?
Yeah, it's just that it's kind of, again, I doubt my ability to express it correctly, because you have to remember, Kanai Sensei spoke he originally wrote this in Japanese, and so it had to be translated, and I don't know if it's true in his writing, but when he spoke, a lot of Japanese people didn't understand him because he spoke in this not archaic, but sort of, somebody described it to me as Shakespearean age Japanese.
He did?
Or samurai age Japanese, yeah. So even Japanese people, if they were talking to him, or not if they were talking to him, but if he's giving in a class and he's talking about Aikido, they wouldn't necessarily know what he was talking about.
Wow.
And also, I guess the syntax, apparently, I know some people who would be able to tell us more about the syntax he used and everything.
Did they translate for him?
Some do and some don't, but there's some people are good translators. Other people are good at understanding the history of the development of the language and all that stuff.
We should have them on the podcast.
We should. We totally should. So anyway, he's expressing this in some very dense Japanese, right? And then a very good translator named Joji Sawa translated it, and then we edited it in English by, we would go over it with him and ask him all questions about it, and try to make sure that without losing the way he expressed it, which you can hear. This is not a normal right. It's some voice that is kind of unique or
it has
distinctive.
It has a gravitas to it.
So we didn't want to lose that,
right? Because
that's in the Japanese, but we just tried to put it in the proper syntax in English so people would be able to understand it as well.
And who was involved on your end helping that?
Joji Sawa was one of the main people, and then me, and then Yasu Ito would join in these meetings, and sometimes I'm Daryl Woolham's my old friend from Aikido, and those were the main group, as I recall.
With Kanai Sensei in
right,
the
with Kanai Sensei, yeah.
What was that like? Like if there was something he disagreed with how it was translated, how would he communicate that? Bring us into that room.
Well, nothing ever got translated how he didn't want it. We'd say, could we say it this way?
Yeah.
You know, something like that. That would be more typical. So, yeah, we would just try. This was an iterative process that we had, and we just went through it. And you know, this was kind of the thing. This was the result of trying to preserve both the original, you know, sort of deep and mysterious way it was expressed with
some
English
clarity. Yeah, things across.
Well, you know, it was clear.
Yeah. Oh,
I'm sure it was clear, but we're trying to make it clear in English.
Right. Can I ask you some questions from some of the text? Because there's a few things that Kanai Sensei wrote that I would love to ask you about.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we can talk about all this. I mean, I think just about every sentence contains some interesting idea. I think it's also interesting. My own opinion is that there's very little, if anything, that are written from this perspective, whatever it is. They're only, you know, most of his other uchideshi are some of the guys that have written really good things. But it's a very distinct thing that I think is very maybe hard to understand, but they're very worth trying to understand.
I understand. That makes sense. I want. Okay, wait. Let me find the quote that. Okay. He talks about problems in Aikido training, and my whole practice of Aikido is all my problems. But this really fascinates me. It should be understood that I am not proposing to constrain Aikido in a rigid mold, but on the contrary, I am suggesting that it is necessary to break out of a rigid mold already in existence, a mold made up of formalized bad habits. This results of these bad habits are easily observable in much of what is today called Aikido practice. There is a second major problem in Aikido training, one which arises in the relationship between Nage and Yuke. Very often training is conducted in a kind of fake confrontational mode without either actually fighting or training in earnest. Because of this, the practitioner typically fails to realize an increasing dependence on the opponent's cooperation. This unwholesome over-cooperation corrupts the relationship between Nage and Yuke, and while it may create seemingly dramatic results, it ruins the opportunity to improve one's techniques or to train one's eyes. I don't understand this. Because I thought we're not supposed to resist a great deal.
No, we're not. He's not saying you should resist, as I understand it. It's like they're complicated ideas. So he thought that although we don't resist each other in practice, that you can go too far in that direction and then people are cooperating too much. And because they're, instead of cooperating to the correct amount, they're over-cooperating, it technically breaks down the practice over time. I mean, it's like, so I think he thought in general people weren't practicing hard enough. But I think that, I think he thought, and I think it was probably correct, because this is purely my own speculation on what he wrote, but, you know, the whole first period of Aikido was very much written by more, you know, Western New Age kind of people. And also the idea of like universal love or everybody's one family. It's a very, of course it is part of Aikido, and it's a very evocative and provocative idea that everybody likes. Mm-hmm. But it's easy to lose sight of the technical requirements of training because you have this idea about how you're totally cooperating with each other. So, in other words, there has to be some element of martial arts that puts constraints on the way that you practice, and you have to observe those if you want to practice the real budo.
Okay, I think I understand more. He writes, everyone should clearly understand that as long as people engage in what is in reality a fake practice in which they are doing nothing more than merrily playing at being martial artists. I love that phrase, by the way. The true Aikido will never be learned or understood.
Right.
So let me take a non-martial stab at this. If I resist, if I'm UK and I resist too much when I'm practicing with an accomplished Aikidoist, I'll be broken.
There would be a good chance. There would be some chance.
Right.
You know.
If I only resist at the moment where I need to give in, and if I constantly increase the ability of knowing where that is, then I stay safe, while Nage gets to fully, clearly execute the technique and know that he or she has. Right. But I'm safe.
Right.
I'm doing it not to merrily dance along,
right,
but to stay safe.
Right.
Like in the dojo, I've been too close when I have been too close to Nage in certain instances and I've got hit because I was too close.
Right.
And that's not merely playing along. It's that's my learning that I wasn't in a safe place in my ukemi.
Right.
But it doesn't look like that lots of times when people watch Aikido because it's so beautiful.
Yeah, because I think it's hard for people to get a non-binary concept. Like, you're either resisting or you're not resisting. When actually the real thing I think that Aikido says is you resist correctly and you don't resist correctly. So correct resistance is not resistance as people would think of it.
I get it. This is like huge. I get it. So it's not a 0 or a 1. It's a line spectrum. And about how much to resist or not to resist.
And that's like, say, if you view that as one line, like going through a sphere, like a diameter going through a sphere,
mm-hmm.
That's just one aspect of the recipe, right? Because in all these different dimensions, you're doing the same thing of taking opposite things and determining the optimal amount of each one to put into the recipe or
right.
the nature of practice in this case.
And that applies, that's fascinating, that applies to Nage and UK, right?
Right.
In figuring while they're interacting together, how much movement, how much stress, how much resistance, how much push,
right.
how much distance.
Right.
I get it.
So both the UK and the Nage are in that process.
And that's what Kanai is talking about.
I think so.
That everyone has to be diligent and honest in the process together.
Yeah, and you got to be, there's some mental state of seriousness he thinks you should have. Like, if you think, like, some people think they're big martial artists, I'm all tough, and they go and they find some other guy and they think they're this, and then they throw each other for a while, and then it's like, no. People have to get off their shticks. Like, the one he mentioned is people thinking they're, big and strong or something like that.
Right.
But they're really not because they're not practicing correctly.
Right.
So the thing that would make them big and strong would be practicing correctly. And to practice correctly, they would have to give up these ideas they have about how strong they are.
Wow. Yeah, I think I have to do that. I get that. I totally get that. But he talks about on that page, like right near where I underlined it, that there's this concept that you have to enter the transaction confrontationally, that UK has to, and there's a Japanese word for it that I can't pronounce. That you have to enter it. It initiates as a real confrontation.
Right. Well, I think I'm not sure if I'm thinking of the same one, but there
was a 2-word phrase.
Sotai Kankei?
Yes.
Okay.
What does that mean?
Sotai Kankei, as I understand it, is the recipe for correct practice.
Oh, okay.
In terms of the correct relationship of the uke and nage in that dimension. And the correct relationship of uke and nage has both confrontational and non-confrontational elements that are put together in a certain way.
Okay.
And if the both the uke and if the Uke and the Nage succeed in establishing this correct relationship, Sotai Kankei, then the practice will be correct, and it will also be very true martial arts practice, but also will be this other thing as well. And that's the nature of Aikido practice.
Is that other thing some level of joyousness or something like that?
I mean, it's a lot of other things. It's like, I keep thinking, if you look at a globe, right, and you keep drawing diameters through it from different positions on the outside, you know, of the sphere,
right?
You have sort of an infinite number of lines, right, that go through the thing.
Is that how you think about it?
That's how I think about it.
That's fascinating. That's interesting. Wow.
And each set of opposites has to be not compromised, as he says later, but used to drive each other to a higher level.
Right. And he talks about in this chapter very hard training.
Right.
You don't always have to do very hard training, but it's okay to do very hard training.
Oh yeah. I mean, he in the dojo, he was like, you know, he was like very strict about, for example, that you know, we should take care of the beginners and not hurt them.
Right.
But he was also very strict about if some people wanted to practice really hard and whatever that meant, that was good. And that just both of those things had to exist, because the people who wanted to practice really hard had to be allowed to practice really hard.
Right.
And encouraged to practice really hard, because that was his idea of that was an element of correct training.
When you get to the level where you can, he said, okay, go ahead. Right.
Yeah, but I mean, by the time we got to that point, we had learned so much about so many things that it wasn't like, okay, now we're going to try to kill each other. You know,
your mind,
at least not in my part, anyway. I mean, sometimes I was worried about being killed, but I was seldom, you know, I wasn't trying to kill anyone. But I mean, it was like you can't completely forget that you're trying to practice in a way that, you know, increases among other things, increases the probability that people will be able to continue practicing.
Right, right.
So it's counterproductive to kill people in that sense. I mean, you need them. So, you know, it's very much in people's self-interest to not kill each other.
I mean, over a course of time, we're going to have, I think, much deeper conversations about Ukemi. And when we do as well, you've taken Ukemi for so many people over so many years. And I'd love to explore sort of your views of you making sure you don't get killed.
Yeah, well,
you've been thrown very hard and very far, Sensei.
Yeah, well, it's true, but I think from Kanai Sensei was very good to his students in that way. Like, he never tried to hurt anyone or lost control, or you know. So he had a way of throwing us, I think, was very safe, powerful, incredibly powerful, but basically safe if you could take the ukemi.
Right.
And then he wouldn't do it unless you could take the ukemi.
Right. But if you could. And you could, and Barbara Sensei could.
You sort of knew that you could receive a hell of a lot of power and still walk away from the experience, breathing, and still have received this incredible power.
Which feels really cool, right?
Yeah, and also knowing that from him, like, his attitude, his personness, his soul was basically not angry or not hurtful. It was kind and generous about people.
Okay, right.
And so because we learned that from him, in most other cases, you would always feel like with other teachers, you would sort of take that and you'd always feel that they were going to take care of you too. Or not take care of you, but at least, you know, so we had a positive expectation. And I think it worked because there were very few people, and I think none of the really big teachers ever were like mean to me. Mm-hmm. They threw me pretty hard, but I don't think they were ever mean to me. And although there's some of my fellow students were very mean to me, but that's a different thing.
Right.
So the people I was actually worried about killed by were the other students, not the senseis, because they were too smart to kill me.
Right.
I hope, or too wise.
So as you were, you know, growing through Aikido, it's the colleagues that you were growing with that you were most fearful of.
Exactly.
I totally get that.
Yeah, because some of those guys, you know, they didn't have the wisdom that the senseis did, but they were very good Aikidoists. So they were, you know, and, you know, like when you're young and full of piss and vinegar. And,
right.
You know, you want to do stuff. You want to practice hard like that. And
right.
you want to see if you can really do things to people. And,
right.
You know, so, or if you want to see if you can really take a technique.
Yeah.
And so like everybody's kind of, you know, not everybody, but people of that kind were always like sort of edging out to the edge.
Right.
And sometimes it would get, you know, sometimes people get mad at each other, and very rarely, but
right.
you know, I mean, but it was just like, it was a more, I would say, between our, you know, your fellow students, it was much more a combustible situation.
Right. Those are the young tigers, as they would say, sort of in the kung fu world.
Is that right?
Yeah. Before you become I don't know. It's like all the animals. So you're a tiger,
Yeah.
and everybody's, "Rrr." And then later you're a dragon. It's like, they're tigers. Oh, they're just tigers.
Yeah. Well, you know, it's like, yeah. So, yeah. So that's how it was. That's basically how it was. Although some of the teachers did really scary things to people.
Yeah, I've seen some tape.
Yeah. But I never felt any, and I'm not sure if I would ever had anything like that done to me, because it's hard to know if you're taking the ukemi
when you're in the air and such.
Yeah, but I never felt like any negative feeling from any of them.
Right.
Even if, you know, I think part of my belief system was that even if they killed me, it would be done in some way that you know, you wouldn't find like distasteful. They were cool guys, you
and
know.
you're on to the next life.
So you know, it's like, yeah.
One of I'll mention a clip, and then I bet if I mention this clip, you'll know exactly where it happened. It's a Chiba Sensei technique. It's somewhere big, maybe it was Japan. He's seated, and someone comes at him. He grabs him by the head, turns him, and throws him by his head against the mat, but does not hurt him because he grazes the top of his head against the tatami and then throws him down. Do you remember when that was?
I've seen him do that technique many times.
I saw him do this technique and there were hundreds of comments, and then UK appeared and goes, yeah, that was me.
Yeah, I'd like to see, we should see that one. But yeah, Chiba Sensei was like, he was amazing.
Yeah. So, is there anything else that we should discuss just from... This was wonderful to take a piece of this text and use it as discussion points just generally about Aikido.
Yeah, I mean...
Can we do more of this?
We can do more of this. I mean, I just want to... What I want is for... I don't want to spend a lot of time reading this stuff to people, but at the same time, I think it's more important to hear his words than our interpretation or our perspective on them, because... you know, I just think that's really the real thing, and you know, I and we, you know, do our best to understand it, interpret it, and turn it into something practical and useful to ourselves
right.
and our own Aikido, our own lives, in the way we understand it. And so that's what I can talk about. Like,
do you want to read another passage? Or do you want me to raise another question? Whichever you want, Sensei.
Let's see.
Take your time. It's radio.
Okay. Let's read the next sentence from that first paragraph.
Okay.
To develop the discrimination to resolve a confrontational situation with omniscience and omnipotence, parentheses, that is, using not merely technique but applying the entirety of one's abilities and wisdom, close parens, is bugokoro, which is, in parentheses, budo's spirit/mind. One must realize that Aikido is neither more or less than the expression and embodiment of this bugokoro.
Wow.
So that's the next sentence.
So wait a minute. So that's really Kanai Sensei saying inside the training of Aikido is lessons about the proper etiquette for everything.
Right.
And how to just walk through life.
Right.
Which is really different than just learning 30 techniques.
Right.
What did you do today? Well, I know 30 techniques. I'm
right.
going to go take a test.
Right. Yeah. So, you know, he's specifically reiterating the thing about wisdom, right? You view it not just as say it's a fight. You don't view it just as a fight.
Right.
Right? It is a fight, but it's also something that you're trying to apply the entirety of your abilities and wisdom. It's like skills and wisdom.
Right.
That's Bugokuro, Budo's spirit mind. This is like the spirit of Budo or something. This is the true spirit of Budo, the high spirit of Budo.
Right.
Yeah. And Aikido is, I think what he's saying is that Aikido is like maybe a more recent expression of that spirit that's been going on through history in various ways.
Or more finely tuned because of O-sensei's, what he brought to it.
Yeah, you can't say anything is better than anything else, or one martial art is, more evolved or less evolved.
Right, yeah, you're right. Yeah,
so you really can't say that because,
But differently tuned.
It's differently tuned.
Differently tuned.
And right. If you look at it in time-wise, it came from older, things.
Right.
Daito Ryu Jiu-Jitsu and whatnot.
Right.
But it was like a kind of, well, I don't know. I'm not that expert on the history of martial arts to know how much of a change it was that O-sensei's ideas about love and heart and peace among people really changed in terms of the history of martial arts. I'm not sure.
Right.
But it certainly was a big part of how he expressed Aikido.
Yeah, but you were correct in correcting me because I was wrong, because say that, ours was higher evolved or that, or because then it turns into this martial arts movie where it goes, my dojo is better than your dojo.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to do that, and it's not right.
Yes. Your technique is very impressive.
Who is your master? He's having lunch now.
Yeah. Exactly.
I get it. Yeah, I was wrong. Yeah, we should never do that.
No.
There's one.
It's like approaching the issue that way is based on false premises that just lead you in a confusing direction.
That makes sense. This word, for the record, I'm being a lawyer. For the record, I'm showing Sensei a word. What is that word?
Yamato Gokuro.
And could you read that sentence? It's like I'm deposing you.
Right. It's like
oh my God.
Yes, I can.
Would you please?
Okay, so this is a Japanese word, Yamato Gokuro. It's the idea that the reason for developing martial arts is to protect those who are unable to protect themselves from aggressors.
So it's not just self-defense. This concept through Aikido is the protection of others?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, exactly. Gokuro, I think, means spirit. And Yamato, I'm not sure. But it's something like the way you would maybe protect a little kid that was a member of your family,
right,
who was in trouble or something.
Okay.
Part of Yamato Gokuro is being protective of other people, especially the ones that need help, or.
That's wonderful. That's a wonderful way to. It's not just that, hey, I may get attacked and terrible things can happen to me, so I should really know self-defense. It also encompasses, or more specifically encompasses, I need to help protect people around me if it's necessary.
Right. I mean, if it's too much like me, I'll protect me.
That's what I got. Yeah. I actually got that. Yeah.
So
it's taking the ego out of it.
Well, not taking it out, but it's repositioning the ego.
Okay.
Let's put it that way, because your ego is not going to go away. It's a matter of like how it fits into this recipe.
Right.
So don't expect it to go away, but you can try to get the right amount in your consciousness.
That makes sense. So this very short podcast has now reached 60 minutes.
Okay.
And we got through less than a page and a half of the beginning of Kanai's writings.
Much less than a page and a half.
Yeah. So there clearly will be an episode 3.
Yes. We have to now. Very clever of us. We've insured ourselves jobs.
We're like that. So I guess we should close out. I am Ricky Berger, and I'm joined by David Halpern Shihan, my sensei, and this was Aikido Perspectives. Good night, everyone.
Bye.